And with that as an introduction, Webster defines distress as this: pain or suffering of mind or body, severe psychological strain, not just a little bit of depression, severe psychological strain, being in need of immediate assistance. That's what Nehemiah's brother just said about the people that are left, that went back in Jerusalem. Man, they are in distress. They are freaked out, man. They are under such strain. They need help right away. And then he also says reproach. Reproach? Yeah. Well, Webster defines that as blame, rebuke, disgrace, shame. So they're not only in need of help and they're physically suffering in mind or body and under severe psychological strain, they're also being rebuked and blamed and shamed by other people. Well, now who would that be? Well, I'm glad you asked. If you remember from Ezra chapter 4, during King Art's early reign, sometime before that 7th year, he stopped the rebuilding of the wall and city of Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, let's go back to Ezra chapter 4. Just turn left a couple pages and you should be there. Ezra chapter 4. Starting to read at verse 7. It says, in the days of Artaxerxes, also Bishlam, Midrath, Tabel, and the rest of their companions wrote to King Art, king of Persia, and the letter was written in Aramaic script and translated into the Aramaic language. And Rehum the commander and Shimshai the scribe wrote a letter against Jerusalem to King Art in this fashion. From Rehum the commander, Shimshai the scribe, and the rest of their companions, representatives of the Dinaites and the other guys, all these other people, and the rest of the nations, the remainder beyond the river, to King Art, from your servants, the men of the region beyond the river, and so forth. Basically, these were the people populating Samaria, north of Jerusalem. Let it be known to the king that the Jews who came up from you have come to us at Jerusalem and are building the rebellious and evil city and are finishing its walls and repairing the foundations. Let it now be known to the king that if this city is built and the walls are completed, they'll not pay taxes or tribute or custom, and the king's treasury will be diminished. Now, because we receive support from the palace, it was not proper for us to see the king's dishonor. Therefore, we've sent and informed the king. Aren't we great guys? That search may be made in the books of the records of your fathers, and you will find in the book of the records and know that this city is a rebellious city, harmful to kings and provinces, and that they have incited sedition within the city in former times, for which cause this city was destroyed. We inform the king that if this city is rebuilt and its walls are completed, the result will be that you will have no dominion beyond the river. The king sent an answer to Rehum the commander and Shimshai the scribe and to the rest of the companions who dwell in Samaria and to the remainder beyond the river, peace and so forth. The letter which you sent to us has been clearly read before me. And I gave the command, and a search has been made, and it was found that this city in former times has revolted against kings, and rebellion and sedition have been fostered in it. There have also been mighty kings over Jerusalem who have ruled over all the region beyond the river, and tax, tribute, and custom were paid to them. Now, give the command to make these men cease, that this city may not be built until the command is given by me. Take heed now, that you do not fail to do this. Why should damage increase to the hurt of the kings? Now when the copy of King Art's letter was read before Rehum, Shimshai the scribe, and their companions, they went up in haste to Jerusalem against the Jews, and by force of arms made them cease. Now, as we talked before, that's where historically this ends, and then it talks about the temple building stopping, and it's a different time in history. This passage that we just read right there happened during the first few years of King Art's reign. By that time, the temple had already been rebuilt, but the walls had not been, but evidently they were starting to do it. The walls had been totally leveled, when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians came in and destroyed Jerusalem. And each of the gates, numerous gates around the wall of the city, the ways to get into the city, had been burned with fire. These big, huge doors that they would use had been burned. And so it was totally leveled. And Art's first decree was stop rebuilding the city. And it was enforced by the local armies. And so for this, among other reasons, the people in Jerusalem, they were under reproach from the people around them. You're not going to build that city. We're going to keep you from rebuilding that city. See? We've got the king's letter in our hands. You will not rebuild this city, bub. But there's another reason I think they would have been under reproach. You remember last week we talked about when Ezra first came. He found out that the leaders had been marrying the pagan people of the area. And you remember? It hit him so hard he tore his robe. And he fasted and prayed and he pulled hair out of his head and out of his beard. And just began repenting before the Lord, and through intercessory prayer began praying for the people as if it was his own sin, though he had not committed it. And the people were so moved that they came and they began to pray. And then they repented and they said, okay, we will put these wives away. And any children we've had by them, we will put them away and send them away. And they did. And I can imagine that the people around are going, look at the way they treat their women. They married this girl for my family. And now a couple years later, he sends her back with the kids. What's up with this? I believe that was a reproach as well. I believe they were probably taunted. You thought you were going to rebuild this city, huh? Yeah, you got that little temple going again. Okay. But you've got absolutely no protection around you. We can come and go as we please. The wall and the gate are broken down, is the report. Burned with fire. There's no protection. They are vulnerable. Torn apart and vulnerable. And so Nehemiah's reaction, if you go back to Nehemiah, verse 4 of chapter 1, it says, so it was when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned for many days. And I was fasting and praying before the God of heaven. And I said, I pray, Lord God of heaven, O great and awesome God, you who keep your covenant and mercy with those who love you and observe your commandments, please let your ear be attentive and your eyes open, that you may hear the prayer of your servant, which I pray before you now, day and night, for the children of Israel, your servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Both my father's house and I have sinned. We've acted very corruptly against you, and have not kept the commandments, the statutes, the ordinances, which you commanded your servant Moses. Remember, I pray, the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. A quote from Leviticus. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though some of you were cast out to the farthest part of the heavens, yet I will gather them from there and bring them to the place which I have chosen as a dwelling place for my name. Now these are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. O Lord, I pray, please, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who desire to fear your name. And let your servant prosper this day, I pray, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man. For I was the king's cupbearer